Braille 1 course, UMass Boston. Teaching Braille Reading and Writing. Once your student is successfully tracking and discriminating different Braille cells, reading and writing begin. As with sighted children, it's important that reading and writing develop together. If you have never taken a teaching of reading course, it is strongly recommended, if not required. There are 4 major teaching approaches to reading. These include the basal reader, which is a multi-approach. One example of this approach is the Patterns Learning Series that we will look at in a few minutes. The second is the linguistic approach. This uses rhyming word patterns such as Nat the cat sat on the mat. The third approach is phonics. Words are sounded out by letters and blends. The last is the language experience approach, in which a student dictates using their own language. This is especially good for older individuals recently blinded or English as a second language. The language experience approach makes use of context clues to aid the student. Contractions are learned as reading and writing are taught. Students do not study the complicated rules that govern the Braille code. They simply learn to read and write using Braille. Contracted Braille is usually taught right from the start. This affects the spelling. It's therefore important that lists of spelling words are given in both contracted and uncontracted Braille and tested for both. Whichever method you decide to use with your student, it's important to know where to get your teaching materials. The most important source to know about for education materials for your students will be the American Printing House for the Blind, commonly known as APH. Every blind child is registered through their state with the American Printing House, and money is designated by the federal government for the purchase of educational materials. This money is termed federal quota. Quota money here in Massachusetts is spent through the Vision Resource Library, where the materials will be housed and itinerant teachers may sign items out from. Each state has their own resource library for materials purchased under quota. If you are not teaching in Massachusetts, you will need to know where your state resource library is to contact for these materials. Numerous specialized reading series exist for teaching Braille. The Patterns Reading Series is available from APH, the American Printing House for the Blind. This series begins with pre-Braille readiness and continues through elementary school. There is a companion spelling series as well as a library series to go with it. However, not all schools will allow the child to work with a reading series that is different from the rest of the class. Pulling the child from the class for special instruction can be an issue. When you first start teaching Braille, you'll want to have a copy of the book by Anna Swenson, entitled Beginning with Braille. This book lists many activities and exercises to advance the Braille student. It includes checklists to help the teacher keep track of where the student is in learning Braille. Many teachers like to work with the series, such as Patterns, and others like to work using their own materials and ideas, as are found in the Swenson book. As you enter into teaching Braille, you want to be aware that no one method will work for all students. Each student is unique and may require a method that meets their needs. Games play an important role when children are learning to read and write. They are highly motivating, as well as providing repetition and reinforcement. Secondary learning is what makes games unique. For example, Braille Scrabble teaches spelling. Crazy Eights teaches number recognition, and Blackjack teaches addition. There are many Braille activity books, bingo, and Monopoly, to name a few others. Secondary learning can, at times, be more effective than direct teaching with drill and practice. It's important that children enjoy reading and read a lot. For a blind child learning to read, it is even more important. It has been said that Braille is a use-it-or-lose-it medium. The student must keep the tactile sense stimulated and needs consistent review and reinforcement as they learn to read with all the contractions. Reading outside of school, and especially in the summer, is essential for developing a strong Braille reader. Studies show that Braille readers, on average, are twice as slow as sighted readers. When timed tests are given to students, Braille readers are to be allowed twice the allotted time limit. Large print readers are given 1.5 the allotted time. In other words, if a class is given 1 hour to complete a test, the Braille reader is allowed 2 hours, and the large print reader is allowed 1.5 hours. The question may come up when you're working with a low-vision student as to whether to teach them Braille. The question of if or when a low-vision child should learn Braille should be decided by the educational team. Usually, a learning materials assessment is done. Teaching Braille to a child is one of the most personally rewarding efforts for TVIs. It is a skill that will have positive impact on the child's education, as well as empower them for the rest of their lives. Teaching Braille Reading and Writing, narrated and produced by Sandy Smith, UMass Boston.